folks. This is not just a balmy morning. It's minus 22 degrees. It's wicked. It's so cold, actually. I think you're going to possibly see steam coming off the ice cold water on the snow. So this is an update, a meandering ramble. It's January 31st, if not February 1st. It's one or the other. We are closing in on 1 year since we were told to lock down for 2 weeks to flatten the curve so as not to overwhelm our healthcare systems. Nearing 1 year. And 1 year later, we are now under curfew in Quebec. The amazing thing is, having lived through this in real time, you can see the evolution. Am I going to catch a fish? Am I actually going to catch a fish? I may have a fish. I have seen the evolution. This has been going on now for close to a year as of March in North America. But I remember in February, when news of the outbreak initially hit in China, and we started seeing videos coming out of China that most people found shocking. I think I'm not going out on a limb to say that. People being unwillingly hauled off to detention centers, medical facilities, we don't know. People being locked into their apartments, having their doors blowtorched shut so they couldn't escape. Massive cars parading down the streets, spraying some form of chemical spray to disinfect the streets of China. And we were watching these videos in North America. I think a great many of us were in shock. We're saying, thank goodness, at the very least, this can't happen in North America and Canada. Then a few weeks later, when the pandemic started going global, at least in March in Canada and North America, we were told we have to lock down for 2 weeks to flatten the curve so as not to overwhelm our hospital systems, our healthcare systems. That was March last year. Now we are actually under curfew, where we're not allowed out of our homes between 8 in the evening and 5 in the morning, at least in Quebec. And the thing is, having lived through this in real time, it's an amazing thing that you have witnessed, experienced, and felt the evolution of, I caught a fish on camera, guys, of the whole situation. I caught a fish on camera. Look at this beast. This fish is so small. Oh gosh. Okay, let's just get this fish back in the water. This fish is so small, can't even fit the hook in its mouth, but we caught one. Look at that. It's finally happened. In you go, down you go. Okay. Having lived through this experience, I have seen firsthand the evolution of a society. At the beginning, people were shocked at the videos coming out of China, and now people are, I would say, not necessarily praising, but accepting the constitutionality of a curfew to stop the spread of a virus. The slow chiseling away at what are the most core civil rights and liberties, the most fundamental, inalienable civil rights and liberties that a great many people in society have said they're not inalienable, they're not fundamental, and they're not core. And all it takes to willingly relinquish these rights to the government is a virus. I think I caught another fish. And it's an amazing thing, people say, yeah, I don't believe that I have any sort of fundamental inalienable rights and freedoms. Under certain circumstances, any of my rights can be taken away. Well, that's a fine belief. The problem with that is that is not only true of them, that means that they don't believe that you have any fundamental rights or liberties. They don't believe that you have any right that cannot be taken away from you under the justifiable circumstances. And we've seen it. We've gone from 2-week lockdown to flatten the curve, and I remember walking the empty streets, taking pictures of the rainbows in people's windows. It's going to be okay. I remember dog runs being locked off, playgrounds being shut down, streets being closed to vehicular traffic. And we were saying, okay, so it's only for 2 weeks. We can do this. We can all make a sacrifice for 2 weeks. We can all make this sacrifice for 2 weeks. And now, nearing a year later, we have basically been stripped and deprived of a lot of our most basic charter guaranteed rights. The right to peaceable assembly, the right to freedom of association. Got another fish. Look at this. This is, oh, this one's got weeds on its mouth. Ooh, which means that there's a school going through. Look at that. Another beast. Amazing. Go down. Freedom of association, freedom of enjoyment of our own property. And the more it goes on, the more the violations keep coming. And people, some people are saying, no problem. People having their businesses shut down, being reduced to a government stipend, not for a couple weeks, not for a couple months, indefinitely. People being, people having their lives destroyed. Now, admittedly, there is a necessity for the cause, but at some point, if there are no fundamental rights of citizens, there are no fundamental rights of citizens. What more do you need? Then they're not rights. They are privileges bestowed by the government that can be removed at a whim. And a great many people seem to be totally okay with that and view it that way. Some don't. And in the States, I've been covering these lawsuits. They started earlier in the States. Americans seem to be less prone to tolerating government encroachment on their fundamental civil rights and liberties. Canadians seem a little more passive. At the very least, if we adopt a judicial standard of assessment. There have been lawsuits coming out of the States, and now there are a great many lawsuits coming out of Canada. British Columbia, Quebec, a lawyer in Gatineau filed a lawsuit contesting some of the curfew measures. Another group of lawyers representing small businesses and individuals who have had their lives upended in Quebec based on these seemingly arbitrary and draconian laws has filed suit on the basis that these orders were never intended to go past 30 days in the absence of legislative approval. Whereas these emergency measures under La Loi sur la Santé Publique, the Public Health Act, I forget what it's called in English, were renewed 10 days after 10 days after 10 days, and then continually having government issue more decrees under this law over the last pretty much 1 year now, whereas under the law, apparently these measures were never intended to exceed 30 days without going to the National Assembly to get legislative approval so that there can be a debate and a democratic method of adopting laws that would violate people's charter rights. And even under the Charter, the Charter, we have the Canadian Charter of Human Rights, and the Canadian Charter of Human Rights, we have a constitution, I forget what exact wording, Canadian Charter of Human Rights, and we have the Quebec Charter of Human Rights. Every province has its own Charter of Human Rights. Even under those charters, you cannot violate the fundamental rights guaranteed by that charter unless that violation can be justified in a free and democratic society. Now, a lot of you out there are saying, you have fundamental rights, but they could be violative, which means that there are no rights whatsoever. Well, typically that's where the courts come in and ensure that any violation is absolutely necessary, is the most minimal violation justifiable under the circumstances, and the courts are there to protect our rights. And we're going to see if the courts are. But what's just interesting to see is the slow boil of the frog. People say, okay, 2 weeks is not that much. I can do it. And I think that's the right thing. Then people say, face masks. Okay, I think we can do that. I may not like it. I may have some problems with it under certain circumstances, but it's something we can agree to do. Then it becomes face masks are mandatory under severe penalty of law. Then it becomes public gatherings are mandatory are forbidden under severe penalties of law. Then it becomes you cannot have your own friends or family into your own private homes under severe penalty of law. Then it becomes you cannot leave your house after 8 o'clock at night under severe penalty of law. And some people are too far gone and they say, okay, I think it's like the gambler's paradox. They've lost too much money already. They can't sit there and pontificate over the money they've lost, the freedoms they've lost, and they just have to accept it and say, okay, well, what can I do now? Too far gone. And others are fighting back through the courts, and we're going to see if the courts are going to protect those civil rights and liberties. It's an amazing thing. see where it goes. I'm excited to view this period of humanity in retrospect. Right now we're still living through it, and we're still seeing the push and pull of the various forces, unsure as to where exactly it's going to go. But even the docile and polite Canadians are starting to fight back using the courts. They're starting to question what's going on, how long this is going on for, the legitimacy of what is going on. I mean, you have our health director, Horacio Arruda, in the context of justifying the curfew, admitting publicly that there's no concrete scientific evidence to support the effectiveness of curfews to stop the spread of a virus. You have the health director, confirming that curfews really are more of a wartime measure to prevent riots, as opposed to a medical measure to prevent the spread of a virus. You have the same guy confirming that if people aren't meeting at night, they're going to meet during the day, so the virus is going to spread during the day if it's spread through that type of contact. Thus, totally undermining the absolute violation of some of the most basic rights, the right to walk outside, contradicting the scientific basis for that measure. Oh yeah, that's a big one. And people are now filing suit and using those very words against the people imposing. This is against the people imposing those measures. We're going to see what the courts are going to say. But one thing, let's get this hook out. There you go. It's just stuck in the lip. There you go. I got a hook in my finger. That's going to hurt a little bit. Another beautiful little perch. We're going to see what the courts are going to do. We're going to see what society is going to do. It is interesting to see those who are, I don't want to say surrendering or abandoning, but it's interesting seeing those who are espousing the belief that neither they nor anyone else has any fundamental rights that cannot be removed at a whim by the government. But that's where things stand now. There are a number of lawsuits pending. The courts don't move too quickly, or I should say the government doesn't move too quickly when it comes to contesting these types of lawsuits. And for anybody who knows how the judicial system works, there are no shortage of ways to delay the judicial process. And there's the expression that justice delayed is justice denied. Justice delayed when it comes to fundamental civil rights is justice denied when it comes to fundamental civil rights. That's the update. I caught fish this time. People can see that I can catch fish in this lake, even when I'm talking. But I think I'd better go in because my toes may have fallen off. They haven't fallen off, don't worry. Ooh, one more fish? Maybe one more fish, if we're lucky. If the video ends now, it's because I didn't catch a fish in the next 2 minutes, in which case, take care of yourselves. Make sure everyone around you is doing okay. Talk to people. Don't lose hope, not in the sense of abandoning action. Use the resources that are available to avail yourself of your rights. Talk about it and spread the word. Here, fishy, 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 fishy.